the candidate actually fully getting onboarded and being set up for success. If anything goes down and the guarantee period gets brought up, you also need to know what exactly happened so that you can prevent this from happening again. Was it an onboarding issue, or was this really just the person was not the right fit? Then after that, you can actually get some inside scoops into the team dynamics, how everything works, feedback on the onboarding process, and any potential new roles that they might need help filling on. Because when you think about it, the relationship that you have with the candidate is going to be very different and more informal than the one that you have with the hiring manager.
Initiating becoming a hiring machine sequence in 3, 2, 1.
Hey everyone, it's Sam Keenley, and welcome back to Becoming a Hiring Machine. This is the show dedicated to fixing recruitment by going beyond saying what needs to change and instead teaches you how to make that change. Today, we've got a great Tactical Tuesday episode ahead of us, but before we get into that, I just want to tell you a little bit about the show. Essentially, we have shows within the show here. Some days we have interviews with industry thought leaders and others who are shaking up the space, while other days we cover things like trending topics. Stop by every Tuesday, like today, for a Tactical Tuesday, where we go deep on how to do something that's going to help you drive better results in your day-to-day. Some days we even open it up for Q&A, while other days you'll get a mic drop episode from Matt, where he shares something that he's been thinking about within the recruitment space and wants you to know. All right, today's Tactical Tuesday. A candidate you just placed has officially started. What's next? Do you wipe your hands clean of it and you're on to the other roles that you're working? Are you watching them like a hawk until the commission hits your bank account? Are you staying in touch with the candidate? So this last one is the topic that we're going to dive into today with today's Tactical Tuesday. And of course, it is with none other than our special co-host, Vivien. Vivien, welcome back.
Thanks for having me. Long time no see.
Right? Yeah, it's almost like every Tuesday, religiously. So you brought this topic up as an interesting one. It's basically like your candidate just started. What's next? So what's the tactic?
Let's dive into it. So this is something that I learned the hard way when I was gathering interview feedback, and candidates were saying, oh, this went really, really well. This was a great interview. I think I'm going to move on to the next stage. And then I talked to the hiring managers and they are like, this was horrible. And even one time I had a case where the candidate said went absolutely amazing. He's really confident he's going to move on to the next stage. The hiring managers were like, it seemed like this person was like super upset. We actually had the feeling he was on the verge of tears. So I was like, wait a minute, those are two very different stories.
Mm-hmm.
And naturally, as a recruiter, I was very interested in making sure that I don't have any clawbacks from the guarantee period because I made a placement that didn't stick, or something else happened, or me having to kind of drop everything to replace someone during the guarantee period, because you really don't account for that. And it's essentially you working for free to replace someone. It's not for free. You got paid for it, but essentially you're recruiting then 2 or 3 people for the one role because it didn't work out. So the easiest way to kind of get ahead of it and figure out what is going on is by checking in with hiring managers and with candidates after the placement. And that's what we're going to do.
Perfect. All right. So let's start with the candidate. I feel like that one, I don't know, hiring managers. Everyone knows how we feel about hiring managers. Let's start with the candidate. It's a fun part.
Let's do it. So with candidates, you want to check in with them to make sure that they're learning everything that they need to learn, that they're feeling comfortable, they're getting along with the team, and they know what is expected of them. They have all the tools and resources to actually do their job well. And so there's a specific cadence that you want to do to make sure everything is okay. And as time goes on, the initial couple of like weeks and months, you're essentially figuring out, is the candidate actually fully getting onboarded and being set up for success? Because if anything goes down and the guarantee period gets brought up, you also need to know what exactly happened so that you can prevent this from happening again. Was it an onboarding issue, or was this really just the person was not the right fit? And then after that, you can actually get some inside scoops into the team dynamics, how everything works, feedback on the onboarding process, and any potential new roles that they might need help filling on. And you get a little bit more of like an inside scoop, because when you think about it, the relationship that you have with the candidate is going to be very different and more informal than the one that you have with the hiring manager. The hiring manager can't tell you certain things. The candidate technically can tell you these things, but he's going to be like, hey, Sam, you didn't hear this from me, but I heard blah, blah, blah is happening. Or this person seems to be really upset lately. I'm kind of getting the vibe that they might be leaving, which leave us in like a really bad spot. You can pick this up as a cue and then kind of just look through if you have a couple of candidates that you can warm up a little bit in case that does happen. Then you can be like, hey, I heard rumors that something is happening. I have a couple of candidates that I've been pitching to other jobs. Do you want me to send them over to you? We already have an agreement in place. So your relationship with the candidate is going to give you that inside scoop that the hiring manager will never be able to give you. So those are the like two main reasons to stay in touch with your candidates.
Okay, I like it. And what about the hiring manager?
Hiring manager, that is the one that actually decides whether you're getting your check, your commission check, whether they're sending that money. Contractually, obviously, they're going to have to send it. But number two is also, are they going to let go of this person during the guarantee period? Are they going to stick with them? Are they actually a good fit? And is this a hiring manager that you want to work with in the future because they are good at actually retaining their employees, right? And this is something that you definitely want to know. And so you want to periodically check in to make sure that the expectations that they have of the candidate are being met by the candidate during the early stages. Because during the onboarding stage, this is where the candidate is a little bit of like a lost puppy, just kind of walking around trying to figure out where's the bathroom and how to use the printing machine. Those are always like the initial questions that everybody has, and nobody wants to ask these two. But it's a thing. Everybody's been through it when you go into the office. So that's one thing. And then also like familiarizing yourself with the tools. Is IT all set up? Did HR do all of the onboarding? Did they even show up on day one and things like that? And once you get past that stage of the candidate is fully onboarded, you then want to kind of check in and say, how are things going? Anything else that you guys need help with? Do you need another XYZ person that I just placed and things like that? And that way you essentially just want to make sure that obviously your placement is doing well, but also anything else that you can help with and get some general feedback about who you recommended to them and who they placed.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So getting tactical with this, we know we should be getting in touch with the candidate. We know we should be getting in touch with the hiring manager. When should we be doing this? Because I feel like that's probably another missing link. You don't want to overdo it. You don't want to just disappear from the scene. So what kind of cadence regularity would you be recommending for them?
Again, always, it depends. But we're going to get a little bit more specific with it depends. So first things first, the start date. On the start date, I would recommend reaching out to the candidate to make sure that they arrived there, they found the right person, and everything is going well. They're really getting onboarded, HR-wise, and all of that kind of stuff. If you are not hearing from the candidate, this is when I would recommend reaching out to the hiring manager to say, everything all right? Did the candidate show? Haven't heard. Just want to check in. How are things going, right? So that's touch point number two. Then touch point number two, I would say, is at the end of the week. All first impressions happen during the first week. That is with the candidate, that is with the hiring manager, that is with the rest of the team, the company. And this is where any red flags or issues that are kind of popping up during the first week, those are little seeds that are getting planted, and they're either getting nurtured and they're going to grow out of control over the next couple of weeks and months, or you can actually weed them out fairly early on or address them. And so at the end of the week, you want to check in with the candidate. How was your first week? Any questions that you have? Or like if they're in the office and you want to joke a little bit, do you know where the bathroom is? Do you know how to use the printer? You can ask these types of questions. And with the hiring manager, you can ask, what are your first impressions? How are they doing during the first week? Anything that really stood out to you? And depending on what they say to that, they're going to tell you whatever really stood out, and you're going to hear whether that is a positive or a negative. And that should kind of steer your touch points moving forward. So past the first week, it starts to slow down. You want to do this after 1 month just to kind of check in, see how things are going. Then 3 months, because at 3 months, this is typically where they are well-versed in what they're doing, where they should be well-versed with what they're doing. Mm-hmm. And there should be a solid working relationship where both are comfortable. There's probably like an initial kind of performance review already and kind of a plan of moving forward and how this is going to work. And then next up, you want to do it at 6 months. this is where they're like knees deep in the work and they're getting their hands dirty and they're working really well. And then obviously just anniversary and just being like, hey, congratulations, candidate, on your first anniversary at XYZ company. With the hiring manager, you can then say, hey, congratulations on retaining your employee for a year now. This is great. Do you need anybody else? Anything else you want to work with me on or collaborate with me on? And that's about it. And then just on anniversaries, pretty much.
Okay. So a couple of thoughts from my side. I'm just genuinely curious about having, you've been in the position. How much are you asking, like, you know, some companies have 90-day reviews, some companies have annual reviews, some are biannual. How deep into the conversations with that are you getting with the candidate or the hiring manager or both? Like, are you meeting expectations? Are they, like, I guess just out of curiosity, should a recruiter be doing more of that? Are you using that to then inform kind of like your profile that you build for these types of roles, or is that crossing the line?
I hate to say it, but it depends. So, and the reason why I say it depends is because what's your relationship like? How much trust do you have with the hiring manager and with the candidate? Some candidates, if you've built enough trust and you have a solid relationship, most likely they're going to volunteer this information to you anyways. Mm-hmm. Same thing with the hiring manager. Most of the time, they're going to offer these things to you, and you can kind of like hint at it and be like for example, the question, anything that stood out to you. When you're asking the hiring manager this after the first week, they're literally going to tell you and give away how they feel about the candidate without you asking, do you like the candidate? Like, that's a very obvious kind of question. But if you say, hey, what stood out to you about this candidate? They're going to tell you what stood out to them. And depending on that, you're going to know which way this is going. And so you don't need to ask the direct question of like, when's your performance review? How did your performance review go? Like, how you feel about the state of the company and like your relationship and your future there. These are things that you can kind of hint at by asking like, hey, how are things going? You know, last time we talked, you mentioned you were working on this really fun project. You were struggling with this. How's that going? Like, keep notes and pick those notes up, and also keep notes of like more personal items. So for example, if they mention that they have kids and they know about birthdays and things like that, then bring this up so that you have that more personal relationship and it's not just work, and you can build that trust, and then that way you can use it to make sure that everything is going well. And yeah, that's about it.
Okay. So we've covered the who, we've covered the when, we've covered the where and the what. So the how. How are you getting in touch with the candidate, the hiring manager? And are you going to say it depends?
Yes, because it depends on the candidates and the hiring manager's preferred communication method. And you really want to keep that in mind because you want to make it easy for them to respond to you. The easiest way for them to respond to you is if you are using their preferred communication method. That can be text, that can be email, that can be phone call, that can be scheduling a Zoom call, whatever it is. You already know what works best for them. Use that to your advantage. You want to get all of these answers. You want to get these insights. So you're asking for something where the other person has to go out of their way to volunteer this information. Make that as easy as possible for them by molding yourself to them, by meeting them where they want you to meet them. And you're going to build absolutely amazing relationships that way.
Okay. And are you usually leaving these open-ended? Like, hey, just text me your thoughts. Like, are you doing like a rank them 1 to 5, how they're doing? Like, I'm sure, again, it's always going to depend on everything else, but do you usually start to steer towards any certain way when you say, you know, how do you make it as easy as possible, but still making sure that you're getting relevant feedback?
This is where figuring out and being aware of the different ways that people respond and how they need to be asked questions to give you the right answers. Some people will prefer open-ended questions and they will like ramble off. And you will start noticing this with candidates during the screening call where you can ask them, so what is your experience with this? And then they freeze, they don't really say anything. Then you can rephrase it a little bit and then say, hey, I see that you have experience with XYZ. What exactly did you do with that? What is a project where you worked with this particular thing? And so that way you're asking the same question in a different way and you're giving them different parameters. So sometimes people can get overwhelmed with all the options. So sometimes narrowing it down can be helpful where you can say, hey, on a scale of 1 to 10, how did your first week go? You can do that. Or if you know that this is like a super chatty person, just text and be like, hey, really curious about how your first week's going, you know, ping me or something like that. And then they will just either call you or they will send you like a whole paragraph via text or email. And so knowing the way that people communicate, so not just the medium, the preferred medium or method of communication, but how they actually prefer to do this, it's not something that you have to like overtly ask. It's more something, ask different types of questions where they have different options of how to respond, whether it's a ranking, whether it's giving options or something like that. And that way you will start picking up on how are you getting the best answers? What kind of questions or what type of questions do you need to ask to get the answers that are actually going to be helpful to you?
I love it. I think that's a perfect one to wrap up on. So, good. Quick hitter. Very tactical. Who, what, where, why, when, how. I think we got all of them, all the major questions. So, Vivien, as always, thank you for taking the time to come on the show. I know I always learn something when you come, so hopefully our listeners do as well. So as we wrap, Becoming a Hiring Machine is a production of Loxo. If you really like this episode, which I know you do, and you want to find one similar to it, we've got a link to a similar episode in the description, which can be found in your favorite podcast streaming platform, as well as on our website, loxo.co/podcast. Full video episodes are available on YouTube, and I need to learn to speak slower, as well as on our website. And if you ever have questions or you're looking for advice, send them to us, podcast@loxo.co. So all right, everyone, that is yet another great Tactical Tuesday with Vivien. Until next time, bye y'all.